Hi friends, we're back. Now, have you ever been through something that you should be really ashamed of? Coming back off of yesterday's video. But in the end of the day, at this age, you're really not when you give it a lot of thought. Well, I happen to have been divorced 3 times, and that should have me just hanging my head in shame, and people have tried to shame me for that. But I just am not. That's why I say that I've had 3 successful divorces, because to be able to come out of these experiences with my life intact, with my humor intact, with my spirit intact, and just stronger and tougher person all the way around, I consider that a success. Now, I talked to my daughter, my eldest daughter, she's 41, and she had gone to counseling, and in there she was complaining about the marriages I had. Now, she only had one man in there as her stepdad. Her birth father, she really didn't know him a whole. She had some visitations with him, but since we weren't together after she was 5, she didn't have so much time with him. Her experience was with my second husband. By the time I got to the third husband, both my kids were gone and out of the house. So she was talking to her counselor about this and complaining about the number of my marriages. And the counselor asked her a question and said, "Well, how many monogamous live-in relationships did you have so far?" And well, she thought, and well, she had 3. She lived with all 3. 2 of them ended up being addicts, and so this counselor said, "So really, the difference between you and your mom at this point is she married these men while you just lived with these men." And that kind of gave her a bit of an understanding. And so she had to bring it up to me because that was a learning for her on that point. And she gave me some grace at that point, which was good. So, as mentioned in my last video, my first husband was Pat. Now, he was my first boyfriend, the first person I ever dated. We met at youth group, got pregnant at 17, married, just turned 18, had Patrice. While I was 18, and it was a rough start because we had broken up before we got married, or sorry, we had broken up before we had found out we were pregnant, and the church kind of pushed us to get married. So what you had here was a scared 17-year-old girl, me, afraid to even let her family know because of how they handle stuff that I go through. It would have been very abusive. And he felt trapped, and he was an alcoholic, and we got married, and that was how we began that relationship. And you got to know that if you start a relationship under that circumstance, it's not going to work. And at the end of the day, I did leave him. I was basically a single mom then during that whole marriage anyway, because he was gone all week doing his sales work and back for the weekends. And when he was back, he would be visiting his friends or his buddies, and his buddies would say, "Go stay with your wife," and he'd go visit yet another buddy. To not, that's how it was. And very abusive physically, absolutely. I remember one time explaining to his mom what was going on, and his mom told me to, as long as he doesn't hit the kids, do what you're told. And that was just a very terrible relationship. And when he wanted to give up the kids for adoption, I ended up leaving, heading up to my friend's house in Ardrossan. Pat's dad came and helped me found a place, and I appreciate him. He was just a wonderful man. And he ended up passing away, oh gosh, 11 years ago. He's about 52. And the way I see it, my numbers are starting to decrease now because the exes are starting to pass away. So once widowed, twice divorced. If I can work these things out, maybe I'll just lose my numbers altogether. Now, I met Norm while I was with a dance club in Red Deer called Cadillac Jacks. And we on Sundays would give the public lessons, and Norm was in the club as well. And he was very nice when I met him. He was nice to my kids when I met him. I have pictures. I tried to find pictures to do this video, and I just couldn't locate it in my cluttered house. But there's one where my daughter is putting bright blue eyeshadow on his eyes, and he was very kind at the start. And aren't they always when you start, because otherwise you would never marry them. And I helped set him up in a body shop. The body shop went down the toilet, and he became very angry, very abusive by the mouth for all of us. And let's see, daughter left to go with her dad, then she came back, and then he was really, really mean to her, just really mean. And I was arguing with him in private, and it was just going rapidly downhill. And then on one occasion, I saw him. He was buying he bought a quad and a fancy truck, and meanwhile our business is going down the toilet. And the ones that funded that business was myself and his parents. And they called because they wanted their money back. Well, he was avoiding those calls. My son didn't know this. So at one point, my son picked up the phone, and he handed the phone to Norm. And it was his parents calling in their money. And Norm was so mad that Roy had picked up the phone that he hit my son. And that was just the end of, that was it. I was done. And well, then came the threats and the homicidal threats. Well, the first husband did that too. It seems to be a theme here. Anyway, this one was going to do me in with the compound bow because I wouldn't hear it coming. There was restraining orders, and they're not worth the money. Sorry, it wasn't worth the ink it's printed on. He was sleeping in my back alley. The police even told me he was sleeping in my back alley because I didn't know at the time, but they didn't do anything to remove him. So by the time the divorce came along and we were in front of the judge, and he was representing himself, so he got to be all kinds of nasty while I was standing up on the stand. In the end of the day, the judge gave us, I didn't even ask for one, he gave me a lifetime restraining order against Norm. And you know, when the judge says forever, and it's not about love, then you know this is a relationship that just shouldn't be. I thought with my third husband, I would go totally different. I met this very cute guy. At that point, he was in the oil field, and he was bringing in a decent income. He was a musician. I'm into music. It was a lot of fun. He kept dumping me over and over, and I kept taking him back over and over. And then when I bought myself a house, then suddenly he showed up with flowers and wanted to date me, like, seriously. And, you know, you should have known better when that was coming, because now I suddenly became, down the road, a nurse with a purse. We were married only 2 years, and a year into it, by then he had quit his job already. He wanted to do sound production, so I helped fund this sound production company with all the equipment and all the credit. And it was a lot of fun because I was helping run the soundboard. And I mean, not everything is bad in this marriage. There was a lot of good times. I met a lot of Canadian classic rock bands and had experiences that way that I would have never have done any other way, and that was a lot of fun. But he discovered, but I didn't know it, he discovered his old love of cocaine from back in his oil field days. And he decided he wasn't going to work. I was the only one working. Money was disappearing out of the accounts. I was waking him up at 4 p.m. asking what was going on, where's the money, and then he's getting mad at me because I'm getting mad at him, and he decides he's finally going to leave because he'd rather live in a van by the river than me arguing with him all the time over this kind of stuff. Well, then he called and said he would like to have a divorce, and I said, okie dokie. And so that was how that ended. It was pretty simple, but I was grateful to be done with this because it got old really, really fast. Now, years later, he did message me, and I didn't know who this person was on my phone because I had deleted his numbers. But but he messaged and he was apologizing, and well, I appreciate that, but there is really no friendship. There's no going back to any of this. So that was the third charming husband, and that's my history. And so no, I don't see my divorces as failures. I see them as successes in extricating myself from bad situations, from protecting my children and protecting myself, and building a life, and keeping my wits about me, keeping my humor about me. I'm wiser now, I'm stronger now, and my fourth marriage, I finally did it right, and we're doing well. We've just passed our 12th anniversary, and survival isn't a failure, it is ultimately a success. And hey, with one ex gone already, and another one not doing too well because of smoking and drugs, and the fallout of that when you get 60-ish, well, maybe pretty soon I can break even in my numbers. And there's no insurance policies involved in any of this.